Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back to Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. Discrimination comes in many different forms. It can come in the form of racism. It can come in the form of discriminating against people because of their disability or ableism. There are many different isms that come along that help people decide, hey, you're not like me, therefore I will discriminate against you. Globally, we have a sexism problem where women are being discriminated against and being harmed in some countries because men fear of allowing women to be equal to them. We hear about stories, of course, specifically in Afghanistan right now because of what is going on with the Taliban and how they are trying to eliminate women from the public eye. But that isn't the only place that this actually happens. There are other places in what we would call free countries where discrimination against women still takes place, where women are thought to be silenced or to be thought lesser of, or their efforts thought lesser of. And we should be working to eliminate all types of discrimination from our global society and promote equality within them. Another form of discrimination, of course, is colonialism, and we're finding this to be evident in the continued conflict between Palestine and Israel, where neither side is coming to any type of agreement. And in this particular case, you're going to hear from the UN Security Council President, a woman, talking about how she wants to bring both parties to a table to discuss how they can work together and bring peace to the region. So let's listen to the UN Security Council and the efforts to bring equality and eliminate some of the isms such as colonialism and sexism from our global society.
Thank you.
No questions? We're just Stakeout. That's what we're here. Oh, yeah, we are here. That's where we're here. Yeah. Can I start? Yes. We're still going to ask questions. What do you answer?
You sure you want to ask questions? Good afternoon. Despite all the threats in the Middle East, including the abhorrent attack in the United Arab Emirates yesterday by the Houthis, an Iranian proxy, the same Palestinians' lies are spread and hypocrisy reigns supreme. While these debates focus on the Palestinians' baseless claims, they continuously neglect the relentless acts of Palestinian terror against innocent Israelis. While the Palestinians are quick to point the finger at Israel, they fail to condemn the hundreds of Palestinian terror attacks perpetrated against Israelis in the last month alone. In fact, not only do they not condemn these attacks, they condone them. While Israelis endure Palestinian terror every single day, we hear no outcry from Palestinian leadership, but worse, we hear no outcry from the international community. When rocks, such as this one, are thrown at your car while your children are inside, is this not an attack of terror? Just ask the family of 4-year-old Adele Beaton, who was killed by a rock just like this. Where is the world's condemnation of attacks like this? Why is this not discussed? Pure hypocrisy. But the hypocrisy continues. The Palestinian false narrative is constantly accepted by the international community. No questions asked. Sheikh Jarrah is a perfect example. The facts are clear. A family, a Palestinian family, stole public land that was earmarked for a school for children with special needs. Nevertheless, the Palestinians twist reality and use this municipal issue to promote their insightful propaganda. And rather than check the facts, the Word and the Security Council immediately blames Israel. But the Palestinians and their libels are far from the only obstacle to regional stability. Iran constantly proves that wherever it extends its tentacles of terror, instability and violence ensue. Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, and the list goes on. The international community has reached a crossroads. The talks in Vienna are reaching a critical stage, and immediate action must be taken. The world cannot allow Iran to continue with their nuclear advancement. If this is the effect that Iran has today on the region before nuclear capabilities, just try to imagine what the Middle East will look like if they do. But let me be clear, a nuclear Iran is not a regional problem. It is a global problem. And this Council's New Year's resolution should be to stop singling out the only vibrant democracy in the Middle East and to focus on stopping the region's greatest threats. Thank you very much.
You heard the council members, and they've said this so many times before. They've condemned settlement building and evictions, and yet these go on. Does Israel not care what the rest of the world thinks? That's my question number one. And if you may, on one other subject, Israel is a good friend of both Ukraine and Russia. There have been some reports that Israel has offered to mediate between those two parties. Can you tell us Israel's view of the current tension and conflict between the two?
I'm not going to respond discussing regarding the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I can tell you that I elaborated about how much Israel is committed to improving the quality of life of the Palestinians and how we are suggesting, and personally as former Minister of Environmental Protection, I suggested and tried to promote many joint environmental projects with the Palestinians. Unfortunately, they always had other priorities. They always preferred to show that they boycott the State of Israel and refuse to any kind of cooperation with us. The current Minister of Environmental Protection of Israel, Tamar Zandberg, met several months ago with her counterpart. She again offered many kinds of cooperation, also accompanied it with budgets and funds, and still she is waiting for the Palestinian to respond. And in regards to what you asked me about the supposed evictions, again, Israel is a law-abiding country. We have a very respected and responsible and independent legal system.
You don't abide by UN Security Council resolutions. That's international.
Our legal system is respected internationally, and our courts are, as I said, independent. And when there is a family or when there is a citizen who tries to invade or to take for his own needs land or a house, So there is always an intervention of the legal system in Israel. And again, sometimes it happens against Palestinian perpetrators. Sometimes it can happen against Israelis, against Jewish families. But it's always under the law, and it's always about legal, independent decisions of our courts and legal system. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ambassador, about the second part, about Iran.
Good afternoon. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce the Norwegian Foreign Minister, Anniken Huitfeldt. Her statement will be followed by Isreali from the NGO working group. Anniken, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. It has been an honor to share the first formal Security Council meeting on threats and reprisals against women peacebuilders and human rights defenders. I would like to thank the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, and civil society representative, Ms. Huitfeldt from Afghanistan, and Ms. Asuka for briefing the Council today. Women around the world who participate in society and politics risk threats, not only for what they say, but for who they are. Women peacebuilders and human rights defenders risk even more, as violence and even targeted killing is all too common, totally unacceptable, and an obstacle to progress, to peace and security. In conflicts around the world, women are taking great risk to contribute to peace and security for the people of their country, because they know that to end conflict, to work effectively towards peace, women must be part of the process. Not because women bring with them some magical solution to end all wars, but because women bring different perspectives. And the more gender divided society is, the more different those perspectives are. We simply cannot afford to keep women out. The price is too high. We see it in Afghanistan, Yemen, Sudan, and Myanmar, where women peacebuilders and human rights defenders too often risk reprisals. Norway's aim today with today's meeting is to put this issue squarely on the agenda of the Security Council, so that we can move forward on our collective promise to let women participate without fear of reprisals. I would like to thank the members of the Security Council for engaging in this topic. And I would like to thank you, Ms. Asuka, for sharing your recommendations to this Council on how we better can protect women in conflict. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kavya Ashok. I'm the director of the NGO Working Group on Women, Peace and Security. As Minister Huitfeldt has shared, we welcome the fact that this is the first Security Council meeting to address threats and reprisals against women peacebuilders and women human rights defenders in conflict situations. As a coalition, this has been our goal to support women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in peace processes. And today at the Security Council, we addressed one of the main obstacles to that goal being realized. So today I briefed the Council on how underreported and how little attention has been given to this issue, and how the failure to address it undermines not only the Security Council's obligation to ensure women's equal participation in all aspects of peace and security, but how it undermines its own work. We discussed two issues: the broader context for women human rights defenders in conflict zones, and the issue of reprisals against women's civil society, particularly civil society briefers at the Security Council. On the broader context, Afghanistan is, of course, a perfect example. Despite the Taliban's assurances to the contrary, we and the UN are daily receiving reports of restrictions on women's rights. Just yesterday, 36 independent experts at the Human Rights Council highlighted a wave of measures, such as barring women from returning to their jobs, requiring a male relative to accompany them, banning women from using public transport, as well as imposing strict dress codes on both women and girls. They have called this collective punishment of women and girls, and they echoed our concerns for women human rights defenders and journalists who are being harassed, threatened, and harmed, with many leaving the country, as well as reports of peaceful protesters often being beaten, ill-treated, threatened, and in certain cases arbitrarily detained. Myanmar is, of course, another example I shared in my statement today, where women who led protests against the coup have been targeted by the military, detained, tortured, and sexually abused, while the Security Council struggles to even discuss the issue in an open forum. We see the repression of women leaders and activists in many other conflict situations, and our message to the Security Council here today is that it needs to be clear that this needs to stop. It needs to stop both out there and in here. Over 200 women from 33 countries have briefed this council since 2004, and we know just from the women that we've worked with that about a third of them have faced reprisals after briefings, and that most of the perpetrators have been state actors. Member states play a key role in ending these attacks in conflict zones around the world and providing them with political support, but so can the UN. If Secretary General Guterres has pledged that women human rights defenders is going to be one of his key areas of focus over the next decade, we want to see senior UN officials regularly speaking out on this issue, peace operations regularly reporting on reprisals and providing urgent support to human rights defenders. We want to know who is being targeted, why, where, on what scale, and what the UN is going to do about it. Thank you.
Audrey, thank you very much. Takeaway is, after listening to all the speeches this morning on what the Security Council should be doing and what the broader international community should be doing to ensure the rights of women and women human rights defenders.
In all peace processes, we should have women at the table to take part. That's number one. The other one is to involve women in all UN peacekeeping operations. And we'll also provide a program to assist the human rights defenders so they can take part.
Madam Foreign Minister, if I can ask you a question about one of the other pressing issues of the day. Clearly, you are a NATO member, you have a border with Russia, and there is the tension surrounding Ukraine. We now hear that there's going to be a meeting between Secretary of State Blinken and Foreign Minister Lavrov in Geneva on Friday. How important is that meeting now?
It's very important to bring people to the table to talk. We believe in dialogue, and that's crucial important for all the NATO countries. And we invited to further dialogue last week, and I'm positive that this will continue.
Madam Minister, with regard to Afghanistan and Sudan, two different topics but share the same parallels. In Afghanistan, women are literally purged out of public life. How can the international community use the current situation, especially the economic hardship that the Afghanistan under the Taliban is going through, into trying to have a sort of behavior modification towards women? What are the measures that Norway and other member states can do at this point?
I think it's very important that we stay united when it comes to Afghanistan, to focus on women's rights, focus on girls' right to education. So that what we will be putting forward in the Security Council, the unity of the Council.
Okay, now I need to we're on.
I said Afghanistan and Sudan.
Yeah.
With regard to the Sudan, yesterday 7 died. Today there are more demonstrations taking place. Falling of fatalities is an ongoing. Where does the Security Council say, please, let's have a pause here, let's meet again and start to try to have a different situation on the ground? The military regimes across Africa, Middle East, Latin America, you name it, are not giving power and economic benefits easily. How can member states be a force towards another behavior modification?
In my capacity as a Norwegian Foreign Minister, we call for dialogue in Sudan. That's important. And then we will consult with other members of the Security Council whether or not we should put this on the agenda in the Security Council.
Anniken Huitfeldt. Det Hvite Huset har sagt I ettermiddag at Russland kan komme til å angripe Ukraina når som helst, og at de ikke vet hvordan de vil svare. Hva din kommentar til det?
Ja, jeg veldig bekymret for denne situasjonen. Vi har vært opptatt av å samtale og samarbeide med andre NATO-land. Vi ønsker jo at Russland skal komme til forhandlingsbordet og snakke, og det positivt hvis det blir møter, men jeg veldig bekymret.
Hvor dramatisk situasjonen nå, synes du?
Det veldig dramatisk når 100 000 soldater står klare rett utenfor Ukrainas grenser. Det en trussel mot den sikkerhetspolitiske orden som vi har hatt I Europa de siste årene.
Du her I verdens mektigste rom I FNs sikkerhetsråd, men denne konflikten kan jo ikke sikkerhetsrådet egentlig gjøre noe med, fordi både Russland og USA vet, og hvordan føles det?
Ukraina har jo vært på dagsorden I Sikkerhetsrådet, men da med fokus på sivilbefolkningen. Men nå foregår jo samtaler I andre fora. Det har vært I NATO- og Russland-rådet, og det foregår også bilateralt. Men det vil jo åpenbart påvirke Sikkerhetsrådet, men det jo ikke her samtalene foregår.
Et spørsmål om det dere har gjort nå. Du har hatt et møte om kvinners rolle I internasjonale konflikter. Hva kom ut av det møtet som du har ledet her I dag?
Vi må ha kvinner til forhandlingsbordet, for man kan ikke skape fred der krig truer uten at kvinner med. Og det jo spesielt I samfunnet hvor kjønnsforskjellene store, hvor det stor forskjell på kvinner og menn. Og så var det viktig å fokusere på Afghanistan, som alle medlemmer av Sikkerhetsrådet nå veldig opptatt av. Fokusere på jenters rett til utdanning, men også rett til beskyttelse.
Når du sitter ved bordet og leder møte, føler du da at Norge har en helt annen stemme enn vi ville hatt utenfor Sikkerhetsrådet?
Jeg føler at vi har en veldig sterk stemme ved å gi FNs menneskerettighetskommissær ordet. Det lenge siden hun har hatt ordet der. Men også få representanter fra kvinneorganisasjoner til å snakke og fortelle om sine erfaringer. Og det jo annerledes enn en del andre FN-land inviterer til når de har formannskap.
Hvordan vil du følge situasjonen I Ukraina videre de neste timene nå?
Det følger jeg tett hele tiden, underveis I mitt opphold her. Vi jo veldig bekymret, og det var det jeg også snakket med når jeg møtte min albanske kollega, for det hun kjenner jeg fra NATO-sammenheng, så dette vi jo opptatt av hele tiden.
What happened yesterday in Abu Dhabi was a terrorist attack committed by the Middle East on a sovereign nation targeting civilian infrastructure and civilians. The UAE has today submitted a letter to Norway as President of the UN Security Council for the month of January, calling for a meeting of the Security Council to address this matter urgently and to respond in a unified voice to this terrorist attack on our country and on the civilian population of our country.
So what should the Security Council, if you're planning to have a meeting, what should the Security Council in your view do?
I think it's very important that the Security Council comes out with a unified statement condemning this for the terrorist attack that it was. And then building on that, of course, I think that condemnation will hopefully deter future terrorist attacks on our country and the escalation of chaos and terrorism in our region.
What about a designation of the Houthis as a terrorist organisation? That's been discussed before, and there were many who were against the idea because if you're going to get some sort of peace talks going, you need to have them to talk, and that would make it more difficult.
Look, I think first and foremost, it's important that we all offer our condolences to the families of the civilians who lost their lives in this terrorist attack. 2 of Indian origin, 1 Pakistani national who were workers in the UAE making a living to send remittances to their home country. So that's our priority, is keeping the residents and the citizens of the UAE safe. With regards to designations globally, entities and militias that behave in a terrorist fashion should be designated as such by the relevant Security Council bodies and also by national bodies of different countries. I think that's an international norm that we all accept. So we're doing our preliminary investigation. The findings of that preliminary investigation will be shared at the Security Council meeting. And building on that, I think the Security Council can decide to determine what the next best steps should be in this matter and in terms of preventing further destabilization and chaos in the region.
Will there be any statement these days regarding this?
Yes, there should be a statement from the UAE with regards to the letter coming out today, and we'll distribute it to all of you. And we hope for a strong Security Council statement condemning this. You'll have seen that over 80 countries and organizations have condemned roundly this terrorist attack on the UAE, which is a transit hub for millions of people around the world and is also a home to over 200 nationalities. Thank you very much.
When the meeting could most likely take place? Could it be tomorrow, as soon as tomorrow, or is it not clear?
This is in the hands of the presidency in Norway, but the meeting will most likely take place before the end of this week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I want to begin by thanking Norway's Foreign Minister for convening and presiding over this important meeting. I also thank all Security Council members and delegations that spoke today and reaffirmed principled positions and support for the rights of the Palestinian people and for a just peace. It is high time the Council seriously address the reality of the situation on the ground caused by illegal Israeli actions that violate the law, contradict the perception of calm and cooperation, and undermine any efforts to resume a political process for a just solution. These actions are not ad hoc, whether settlements, home demolitions, forced displacement of Palestinian families, or arrest and imprisonment of our civilians, including our children. These actions are deliberate, strategic, and systematic, legislated in racist laws aimed at further entrenching Israel's colonial regime and control in our land. If allowed to continue, these actions will render the two-state solution impossible and will put us on a crash course to the expulsion we are all trying to avert. Today, Council members and the wider international community were clear in their messages and rejection of the occupation's false rhetoric and distortions, including the lies by the Israeli representative in this chamber. They were firm on the illegality of settlements, home demolitions, and forced displacement, as we saw cruelly happen to the Salhiya family today in Jerusalem, where so many others are living under this threat, and that they must be halted, that violence and terror against civilians must end, and that human rights and international law must be respected. The calls for an end to the Israeli occupation were equally clear. This illegal colonial apartheid occupation has to end. The Palestinian people will never accept to remain under its captivity. They will never forsake their right to live free in their homeland. While we welcome the strong messages today, we expect and need more. We expect the Council to uphold its charter duties, implement its resolutions that represent global unanimity, including on the parameters for a just solution. The Council must act to justly resolve the conflict, not manage it, not lament its protraction and worsening crises after crises. We expect that all states and organizations also uphold their obligations under international law. It is time to stop complicity with this illegal occupation, to stop the benefits flowing from this illegal situation, and here I refer specifically to settlements and settlers. It is time to hold the perpetrators accountable for their crimes, for the killing of innocent civilians, for the flagrant colonization of another people's land and their persecution. This must include the listing of settler militias as terrorist organizations. Accountability measures are what will change this dismal equation. Statements alone and timid condemnations, and even worse equating between the two sides, will not change anything, because we all know and witness every day the occupying power doesn't care about statements and condemnations. It makes a mockery of this organization, flouting its rules while exploiting its benefits. What is needed is concrete action to rectify course before it is too late and lead us towards the goal on which there is an international consensus, with the exception only of Israel, the two-state solution on the pre-1967 lines, unrealizing of long overdue freedom and justice for the Palestinian people. We will do everything in our power to achieve this goal, to ensure that accountability will bring an end to this injustice, unwavering in our commitment to justice, peace and security for our people and in our region. Thank you very much.
لأنه الوزيرة راح تترك الساعة 2.
Good morning. Happy to introduce the Norwegian Foreign Minister, Anniken Huitfeldt. Please, Anniken.
Good morning. Today I'll chair the open debate in the Security Council on the situation in the Middle East. We meet at ministerial level. My hope is to contribute to renewed efforts towards solving the conflict. The two-state solution is the only viable path to peace and security for both people. Therefore, I urge the parties to resume talks. I invite the Council to join me in calling for this. The situation on the ground is unstable. It could flare up at any time, bringing new escalations of violence and hostilities. We need to steer the situation onto a better track. Last year, we witnessed that tensions and violence increased. In 11 days in May, 242 Palestinians and 12 Israelis were killed. This is unacceptable. All civilians must be protected. Human rights must be respected. The settlements are a major obstacle to peace. They are illegal under international law. Yet this construction and expansions has continued. Last night, another Palestinian family was evicted from their home in East Jerusalem. All settlement activity, the demolition and evictions must stop. The Palestinian Authority is facing severe financial difficulties. The space for civil society in Palestine has been restricted. I am encouraged by the economic cooperation between the Palestinians and Israelis. We need to strengthen the Palestinian Authority and the economy. This will improve living conditions for the Palestinians. I want to thank EcoPeace for being here today and bringing a different perspective into our discussion.
This meeting today is going to lead to... Oh, okay.
My name is Ibtisam Azim from Al Arab Al Jadid newspaper. You said you would like that countries move and do more and to bring parties to talk to each other. How do you want to do it? Do you have any plans for conferences? And then what the steps you are going to do in Sheikh Jarrah, because the family that was evicted yesterday, it's not the first family, and many families are facing similar situation. So what do you think the international community should do? Thank you.
I call upon the international community to urge both parties to resume talks. And that's my message today. And now it's up to the parties. And we will be ready to assist.
Minister, you called for a ministerial meeting. Most council members aren't sending ministers. Does this show the world doesn't care?
I think we do have ministers here today, so we have leveled up the discussion here. I'll urge all parties to resume talks, and I want to get more attention on this conflict, because my fear is that we forget this conflict, and it's a Norwegian interest to keep attention on this.
And on Sheikh Jarrah, do you believe it was an act of deliberate defiance to the Council, the fact this has happened in the last few hours?
I'm deeply concerned, and I call upon Israel to respect international law.
Anniken Huitfeldt, du har valgt å lede et møte om Midtøsten mens du er her i New York. Tror du virkelig at dette møtet i dag kan føre til noe som helst forandring eller oppstart av fredsprosessen igjen?
Vi fikk jo økt oppmerksomhet da jeg ledet giverlandsgruppa i Norge i november for å få til økonomisk framgang, mer handel, mer økonomisk aktivitet. Så jeg er jo engstelig for at det ikke blir nok oppmerksomhet om denne konflikten, så jeg håper at møtet i dag kan bringe mer oppmerksomhet omkring.
Okay, thank you very much.
I now give the floor to Ms. Michelle Bachelet.
Thank you, Madam President of the Security Council. Excellencies, this Council has played a vital role in the drive to ensure that peace is built by and for women. Yet between 1992 and 2019, only 13% of negotiators, 6% of mediators, and 6% of signatories in major peace processes worldwide were women. And that was before the pandemic struck and before a wave of intensifying conflicts, undemocratic political transitions, and disastrous humanitarian crises took hold in many societies, further reducing women's rights. The situation that now faces women human rights defenders and prospects for women's full, not tokenistic, participation in shaping and building peace are vastly worse. This harms all of us. Women's safe and meaningful participation is necessary to ensure a full range of action to bind society together and address not only the root causes of conflict, but also its full impact, including gender-based violence and the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war. Implementing Resolution 1325 requires consistent policies for public recognition, effective protection, and vastly increased strategic, flexible, sustainable, and targeted financing for women civil society organizations, including women human rights defenders. And it requires action to end the violence that so frequently targets women and girls who seek to lead movements for change. In reality, barely 1% of funding in fragile or conflict-affected countries goes to women's rights organizations. The enabling environment that lies at the heart of the Women, Peace and Security agenda is also largely absent. In 2020, my office verified 35 killings of women human rights defenders, journalists, and trade unionists in 7 conflict-affected countries where data could be retrieved. This number, which is certainly an undercount, surpassed the confirmed numbers of killings in 2018 and 2019. We have also documented patterns of attacks against women working on gender equality, sexual and reproductive health and rights, corruption, labor rights, and environmental and land issues. In every region, we have seen women subjected to arrest and detention, intimidation, sexual violence, and harassment by smear campaigns. Intimidation and reprisals by state and non-state actors against people who cooperate with the UN also remain high, including in countries on the Council's agenda. These human rights violations significantly undermine global efforts to prevent conflict and sustain peace because they deter women from participation and leadership. Excellencies, in Afghanistan, the de facto cabinet and other key fora at national and provincial levels exclude women. This heavily undermines their capacity to ensure a durably peaceful future in which all have an equal stake. Facing a humanitarian disaster of unprecedented proportion, the country needs all its people to come together. Instead, denial of the fundamental rights of women and girls is massively damaging the economy and the country as a whole. In recent months, many Afghan women human rights defenders, journalists, lawyers, and judges have been forced to flee or to go into hiding, often after repeated threats. Many have lost all sources of income. Afghan women have been excluded from decision-making that affects their lives and families, and prevented from fully exercising their right to participate in all spheres of civic and public life. I urge the Security Council to ensure that perpetrators of human rights violations and abuses in Afghanistan, including against women and girls, are held to account to enable conditions for sustainable peace. I ask all states to use their influence with the Taliban to encourage respect for fundamental human rights. I further call on states to create safe pathways and resettlement programs for Afghan women human rights defenders and to immediately hold the deportation of Afghan women who seek protection. It is also vital to maintain a strong human rights presence and focus for all UN engagement in Afghanistan, with strong advocacy and tangible support for women human rights defenders and peace builders and for women's human rights. Excellencies, in the Sahel region, critical deficits in women's empowerment are clearly a factor in the complex development, security, and humanitarian crisis. Several countries in the region are at the very bottom of the UNDP's Gender Equality Index. Extremely violent armed group attacks also increase the threats of abductions, violence, exploitation, and abuse of women and girls, as well as local closures of schools, particularly for girls. I was therefore encouraged during my recent mission to the region to hear senior members of the G5 Sahel Joint Forces emphasizing the importance of increased integration of women in political, security, and development policies to address the crisis. OHCHR will continue to support the implementation of the G5 Sahel Joint Force Compliance Framework to address these issues, including obstacles to women's direct participation in the security forces. Ensuring women's presence in the armed forces will be helpful on many levels, including fostering public trust. In Myanmar, women human rights defenders have long been a force for peace and inclusivity, including at the forefront of resistance against military rule. But many women's civil society groups have been forced to shut down amid the violence that has gripped the country since February last year. Women medical workers, media workers, protesters, participants in civil disobedience, activists on social media, and those providing food and shelter to people in need have been targeted for assault and arbitrary detention. Women and girls appear to number over 2,100 of the estimated 10,533 people detained by the State Administration Council and its affiliated armed elements between February and November last year. In contrast, Colombia's 2016 peace agreement was a global landmark in terms of women's participation and the inclusion of gender-specific measures. The Truth Commission and the Special Jurisdiction for Peace have also promoted women's participation, and the Search Unit for Persons Deemed as Missing has recognized women's essential role in the search for missing people. Nonetheless, implementation of gender-specific measures on issues such as land reform, political participation, security guarantees, including for women human rights defenders and other points of the agreement, should be strengthened. I also recommend greater efforts in Colombia to combat continued conflict-related sexual violence and to guarantee that victims of such crimes are treated with dignity and have access to adequate protection, justice, and reparation. This work will serve the cause of justice and therefore peace. Excellencies, at the heart of Resolution 1325 and subsequent resolutions by this Council is the need for strategies that create inclusive and safe participation channels for women from all backgrounds, movements, and communities. Protection of their work, lives, and rights is central to this effort. The international community must stand united and push back against attempts to attack, silence, and criminalize women's rights to defend rights, participate in decision-making, and express dissenting opinions. We also need to do more and better to provide safe spaces for women human rights defenders to interact with the Council and its subsidiary bodies without fear or retribution. I'm encouraged to see some states working to mitigate reprisals against women peacebuilders who engage with the Council, including tailored contingency plans in coordination with UN peace operations on the ground. I also applaud states that provide support to women briefers who face retribution as a result of their cooperation with this council, including technical, financial, and advocacy assistance. It would be valuable for the Security Council to consider harmonizing approaches to ensure the safe involvement of women in peace processes, as well as their participation in the Council's work. Going forward, peace operation mandates could explicitly include provisions for protection of all civil society actors and UN interlocutors from threats and reprisals, particularly women peacebuilders, as is already in the case for UNMISS. Strengthening the timely, disaggregated collection of data on women's participation and protection in peace processes is also essential to more effective monitoring of results. In recent years, OHCHR has been strengthening the gender perspective of UN investigative bodies, providing training and guidance, and deploying dedicated gender and gender-based violence experts. For example, the October 2021 report of the fact-finding mission on Libya documents the disproportionate effect of the conflict and proliferation of militias on women, including the emblematic killings of women political leaders and women journalists. It also highlights repeated attempts to silence prominent women through violence, including through online incitement to violence, and the resulting chilling impact on women's engagement in civic space. These investigative efforts, including through the deployment of dedicated capacities, require more consistent and more effective financial resources. Excellencies, decisions on peace that do not reflect women's voices, realities, and rights are not sustainable. There must be clear advocacy for and significant investment in women's human rights defenders and peace builders, removing obstacles such as the digital divide, expanding financial support, and significantly increasing accountability for attacks and intimidation. The work of addressing discrimination, inequality, denials of women's civic space, and gender-based violence should also be viewed as a priority for building peace. I thank you for your attention.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.